Welcome to Hancock's VMware Half Hour. And welcome back to another episode of Hancock's VMware Half Hour. Well, in this video today, we're going to install Windows Server 2025 Datacenter Edition on our MINISFORUM MS-A2. So, I'm going to get into it. I'm not going to waffle on. Let's get this powered up. Okay, so the beast is powered up. Number of things have happened really with the MS-A2. I've installed an NVMe U-2 device, but since then I've actually struggled with it because I think that I've actually basically got a counterfeit version. Anyway, so that's a video to be just put on the shelf at the moment until we can resolve that issue. So in the meantime, let's get on and install Windows Server 2025. Now, you may have noticed that I'm using Ventoy. I actually decided in the end that I would actually basically put one of my many NVMe's that I've got. It's only 128 gig one, so it's a tiny one. So I thought I'd actually basically put it in an external NVMe case. USB 3. It just happens to be on an incredibly long 5-meter USB-C to USB-C. That's actually plugged into the back of our MS-A2. And anyway, going back to the fact that I'm using Ventoy because I can basically just copy the ISOs as is direct to the Ventoy partition and we can boot them all. So I'm just going to select that Windows Server 2025 ISO. I'm going to boot in normal mode. It's going to ask me to boot from, and we're just going to hit enter, and that's basically going to start loading the files, and we're going to get on doing installation. Now, this is actually basically moving on. If you're been following the channel, then you will know that we've got one of these mini forums, MS-A2, that we're going to experiment with a lot. Here at Hancock's VMware Half Hour. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. And we're going to experiment and have a little look at the MINISFORUM MS-A2. So I already installed Windows 11 on the last video that I did. So I thought, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get Windows Server 2025 up on this. And then later on we'll enable Hyper-V and we'll do some migrations from VMware vSphere. Why not? So yeah, I want to delete everything. So yeah, we want Windows Server 2025 Datacenter, the desktop experience. We want a GUI. Yeah, I'm going to accept the EULA. We're going to search for disks. I'm going to have a little look here at what we've got now. The last video I think I did actually was we removed the Wi-Fi Bluetooth card in the server and we replaced it with one of these, which is a PCIe Gen 4 NVMe 2230 M.2 SSD, 1 terabyte, and we used an A and E key. That was the device that I used. I couldn't remember it at the time. A and E key. At the accident and emergency key. So you can see that that's disk 1 here, our unallocated space. This disk 0, in fact, is the U2 device that I've got installed at the moment, which I've done a video about. But as I said, that's on the shelf at the moment because I think that we've got a counterfeit fake version. So I need to get to the bottom of that. So I'm going to use disk 1. So I'm just going to say next. And at the moment, I think we did actually install, I think I installed Ubuntu 2404 LTS quickly on the U2 device. So install Windows 2025, keep nothing, going to install. That should be a different color than that. That should be blue, I think. It's this capture card that I'm using for some strange reason. When it gets a bit warm, it goes a slightly funny color. I think it goes a bit green. Anyway, so there's really not much further for me to do, really, to be honest with you. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to bob off. I'll come back when this has been installed, and we'll log in and we'll have a little look and we'll install the drivers. So I'll be back shortly. And sometime later that day, I left it running because I knew eventually we were going to get a Windows Server 2025. So might need to come back again, will depend on how fast this is, but tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to have a swink of my soft drink of choice, Pepsi Max, of course. Thanks to those of you that are concerned that I drink too much of this, and also espresso coffee. And you may have noticed that I'm a bit lighter in the face. It's been getting much too hot in this lab and in the UK. So it was about time to show off my summer plumage. So I've had a little bit of a tidy up, and if I get a chance tomorrow, I'll maybe go and have a nice haircut as well. I wasn't watching then because that's just booted Ubuntu. I really need to pay attention to the screen. Anyway, it shows that the MS-A2, got the password wrong. It shows that the MS-A2 runs Ubuntu 24. Let's just restart that. And force it to boot off the 1 terabyte Crucial P310 that we've got here. I'm just banging the keyboard here. It's probably because Windows Boot Manager. There we go. That's a bit better. Of course, because the first disk is probably running a Linux partition that Windows Boot Manager couldn't write on it. Okay, so I'm just going to specify a password. Now, I have actually connected both network interfaces on this mini MS-A2, but as I've mentioned before, I don't expect that it's going to have the drivers for the Realtek, and I do apologize about this horrible pink. So I'm just going to say accept. Let's just minimize this. Yeah, this pink color. Yeah, is because of the capture card. But what I'm going to do, start without your data. Don't allow. Continue without this data. Don't allow. Let's have a little look at device manager. It's horrible, this. Hang on a minute. Tell you what, I can't stand this horrible pink color. I'm going to reboot this. I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to restart. So we're back, and we've restarted this video editing rig because that pink screen was really getting on my nerves. It was winding me up. Anyway, apologies. I think that it is to do with the heat inside this particular box, which is a first gen Intel i7 Extreme Edition. So this box does get very hot, and I don't think the Elgato HD60 Pro, which is what's inside the box, I don't think it likes the heat. And when it gets a bit warm, we start getting a pink screen on the HDMI input. It's nothing to do with the MINISFORUM MS-A2, which actually originally I thought it might have been originally, but it's not. Okay, so you join us back logged in to Windows Server 2025 Datacenter, the desktop experience, or the one with the GUI. I've gone to the MINISFORUM website. I've downloaded the all drivers package, which is about some, I don't know, it's a 1.3 gig. I've extracted that all. So now we're going to do exactly the same thing. If you watch the Windows 11 version I did of this, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to bob through device manager, and we're going to replace all these things that are missing. Now, in fact, actually, I was just looking there to think, hang on a minute, it's the Wi-Fi card and the Bluetooth card are missing. Of course it is missing, because it's in a box somewhere. Actually, I think, I was just thinking then, where is it? And of course, if you watch that video, you remember that I actually basically removed it, and I actually basically put it in this box. Sometimes I think I'm going to have to go back to the previous videos and watch them to remember what I've done with stuff. Anyway, okay, so without further ado, let's have a little look at that folder that we've extracted. And okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to right click Ethernet driver. I'm going to do update driver. I'm going to browse my computer. I'm going to have a little look in downloads. Okay, followed by next. And it's not actually basically, that's interesting. These are Windows. I wonder whether or not that there's no drivers for, of course, just let me go back to that. Possibly made one real big cock up here. Driver package. I'm making an assumption that the drivers would have been for Windows Server 2025, but they made just before Windows 11. Let's have a little. I'm going to go back here. I would have expected to see it pick up. So if we go to, okay, let's just double click on install. First of all, and install those drivers. Let's just click close on that. Open. Now I'd have expected to see error messages like we saw previously in Windows 11, whereby basically it's not signed, but it's not actually doing anything. Let me just put this on pause and have a little look a minute. Something's a bit weird. It's responded that time. So that's just going to say run anyway, and see whether or not that we do actually basically get a Realtek driver installed. That's the drivers for the X710, the SFP drivers. Like, it would be very short-sighted of MINISFORUM if they didn't actually provide drivers for Windows Server 2025. Okay, so let's have a little look at a refresh. Okay, I'm just going to have a little look in network adapters there. So, okay, so we've got the 710. Those have appeared, and we've got the Realtek, but we've got another Ethernet controller there, which is missing. Let's just run this one. And we'll run through and we'll do the others. So let's have a little look what we've got here. So we don't need to do the MTK, which is the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi, because we've removed that. So, and we don't need to do That's the Bluetooth, that's the Wi-Fi, so we don't need to do those. We can do the audio. So I'll wait for this to finish. Okay, it's start installing Intel Ethernet driver. I'm still seeing we've got one there that says Ethernet, an exclamation mark next to it. And it's interesting because we've actually got, I'll just move that out of the way. Those are the two 710, so those are the SFP. That's the Realtek gaming family controller. But I'm not actually seeing the Intel controller that we're using at the moment. Let's just have a little look at settings, network, and have a little look at Ethernet. Okay, so we are connected. Not connected, not connected. So those are the two. Okay, so it's interesting actually. The one at the moment that we're actually, it's a Realtek one at the moment that we're actually connected on, because I've actually basically patched in both network interfaces. And it's the Intel one at the moment that it's struggling with. Let's have a little look at device manager. Interesting. We've still got a missing one there. Okay, let's continue. We'll have a little look in a minute. So let's have a little look at the audio. That's the audio there. So we've got drivers, we've got an installer. So I do run as administrator, run anyway. We'll install the sound drivers. We'll then have a little look at installing the AMD bits and pieces, the AMD graphics card. So we'll just run the setup program. Now, one of the things I've actually noticed, this is what they call the Adrenaline Edition. This is the version that actually comes in the driver package. Okay, so this isn't actually supported on Windows Server 2025. As obviously it's just designed for a desktop operating system. So let's have a little look at the chipset software. Whether or not that this is going to... Anyway, as I was saying, I noticed that in the Adrenaline, the version that actually comes in the driver package is obviously a slightly older version, because shortly after you've installed it, it goes off to AMD and basically downloads another version. But one of the interesting things is that the later version doesn't seem to show CPU temperature. It shows CPU utilization, but it doesn't show CPU temperature. Not that I found at the moment. Maybe I'll have to dig around a little bit more, but I was actually quite liking the version that I had that showed temperature in both CPU and GPU, and showed the utilization for both. And then after I basically upgraded it to a later version. Okay, so it can't actually install the AMD chipset drivers either. System update is required to complete the installation. Now, I didn't, of course, actually basically have a little look at Windows updates and see whether or not that it's able to download any drivers. So there we go. There's a bit of a question about Windows Server 2025 and our missing drivers. And as you may have actually basically heard me say before, I do get a little bit compulsive disorder, really, with missing drivers in operating systems. I don't really feel that they're complete unless I've actually basically got all the drivers for them. But we'll have to see. This is certainly not downloading any drivers. And I'm really puzzled with the missing Intel driver, which makes me wonder whether or not that the drivers that are shipping out in the driver package are for desktop operating systems and not server based operating systems. Although saying that may not necessarily be true, of course, because we've got Intel drivers for the X710 there, but we've not got Intel drivers for, I think it's a 226-V. Drivers for this device are not installed. Oh, I didn't think that I was going to find a driver there. Okay, we'll wait for these Windows updates to complete, and in the meantime I'll have a little Google around and see whether or not that I can find the missing driver. So I'll be back shortly. And we're back in the room. Okay, well, that was a little bit of a journey. So I finally managed, I will show you, no smoke and mirrors here. So if I go to Ethernet, and we now have a little look there, we've got one NIC that's connected there. We've got one NIC that's connected there, and we've got two that are not connected. And if I must admit, I do not like this new interface. So let's just do it the old-fashioned way. Change adapter settings, and there you can see, if I go view details, just maximize that a bit. Okay, so let's have a look at status one connected. Okay, so this is the Realtek Gaming 2.5 NIC, and this is the one that we've actually struggled with, the Intel Ethernet controller i225. Now if I just look at the status on that to show you that we do actually have, it is connected, 1 gig internet. Look at the details, it has got an IP address, so it's all working correctly now. Now what I've discovered is that the i225 network interface controller is it's i226-V, recognized under a desktop operating system like Windows 10 or Windows 11. Intel doesn't really want you to use that in a server-based operating system. So although the drivers will work, if you actually basically look through the inf file, they don't actually basically put the details in for a server-based operating system. So therefore basically it comes up and says there are no drivers available. So what I've actually basically had to do is I've done a force install. And a force install really is quite simple. I thought I had written I'm sure I had written the details down and written them in. I did. There we go. So you have to run BC edit. I'll put this in the description if you want to do this hack. But quite simply, you have to turn off the integrity checks, and you have to turn off signing. The moment that you've done that, you can actually force load any driver. And how I did that was by, we'll practice on this one, but I'm not gonna do it fully. So basically, that Ethernet controller that we had here, and click properties, and before, of course, it didn't have a driver. So what I've actually basically done is that I've gone to update the driver. I've browsed my computer for drivers, and I then said pick a list. I've then actually basically selected the driver from the list and forced installed it. Now I knew that it was a 225 driver, and if you actually basically have a little look through, or you can actually basically just have the disk, and there you will actually basically see a list of drivers that are shown only for the server-based operating system. And I actually force installed the Intel Ethernet controller i225-LM. An LM driver is a server operating system driver, and i225-V effectively is a desktop. So it's really Intel's way really of just trying to force you to buy a commercial network interface card rather than a desktop card, when in fact really I think the chipsets are both the same. So now we should be able to go to our Intel Pro set, and there you can quite clearly see they obviously basically think that an SFP X710 is a desktop slash server, because we had no problem with installing drivers for that one. And just to show you that everything's working well with that force driver, then we can look at the details there. PCI Express driver version not supported, the bus, the copper, negotiated link speed, etc. in there, and we can do cable tests, etc. with that as well with the Pro set stuff. Then what you need to do, once you've actually basically set, let's just open that hack again. Well, I'll just call it hack.txt. So once you've actually basically done BC edit, disable integrity checks, test signing on, then basically shut down, restart, force load your driver, then basically run BC edit, enable integrity checks again, set test signing off, shut down, restart, and you're solved. I've still not really managed. It's going to bug me. I know that these drivers here would be fixed by using the AMD software. Clearly this box is aimed at gamers, and the AMD drivers and kit and software is also aimed at a desktop operating system, not a server-based operating system. But what I might do, I might actually basically reach out to Minis forums, see what they say, because of course we can't even set the display adapter either properly, because of course again the GPU and the CPU I think are possibly integrated, or if they're not integrated then they're mobile versions, so they're OEM versions. So because they sit in an OEM version, a bit like a laptop, then the general drivers from AMD for Radeon and Ryzen are not going to work, because they're just going to refer you to the vendor. Anyway, so we're ready for our next bits and pieces, which will be in another video when we actually basically start looking at Hyper-V on our Microsoft Windows Server 2025 on our Minis forum MS-A2. So thanks very much for watching another episode of Hancock's VMware Half Hour by me, Andrew Hancock. If you've liked this video, then give it a good thumbs up, like, subscribe and share. If you don't like it, then give me a thumbs down. Don't like it, put a comment in the description as to why you don't like it, and I'll be back again for another video by me at Hancock's VMware Half Hour. So cheerio and goodbye.